Hello again. Now, the Minister of Basic Education, Angie Motshekga, says old infrastructure is crippling schools. She was speaking in KwaZulu-Natal during her inspection of coastal schools. Many of the schools have no running water or electricity, and those that were damaged by floods last year have still not been repaired, just almost a year later. These challenges facing our education system are too vast for government to address on its own. That's according to the NGO Crew for a Cause. They run tests to determine gaps in the schooling systems. So what are the results of their latest investigation? I'm joined now by Matthew Sterne, Director of Crew for Cause. Matthew, good afternoon. Welcome to today, and thank you very much for your time. Are things getting worse?
I think so. Obviously, COVID has a huge influence on the schooling over the last few years. And it already was very bad. I mean, as we've done in our studies, the international comparisons between the African education system and the rest of the world is very poor. We often rank at the very bottom of the studies.
Yeah, a couple of years ago, I think it was Amnesty International described South Africa's education system as broken and unequal. And you find that that would be mostly in poor areas, in disadvantaged communities, in townships and rural South Africa.
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, we've got an unequal education system across the board, but across the provinces, especially the rural schools perform very, very poorly. And when it comes to kind of the statistics, you know, the top 200 schools, for example, perform, they'll get on average as many distinctions in mathematics as the next 6,600. So we've got a system where kind of the top 10% of schools are performing okay, and the next 90% are considered kind of poorly funded and poor performing dysfunctional schools.
When you compare our schooling system to the rest of the world, what's the gap?
It's a huge gap. There's two studies that people use. There's the PISA and the TIMS. So the PISA is the Program for International Student Assessment, and they test 15-year-olds in reading, maths, and science. And they test that every 3 years. The latest test results, South Africa ranked last out of 79 countries. And TIMS is the Trends in International Maths and Science study, and that they do that every 4 years. They test grade 4s and grade 8s in maths and science. And again, we rank at the very, very bottom. So the PISA one's especially discouraging because out of 79 countries, we're at the very bottom.
Yeah, it's very concerning when you put it like that. I've also seen mention of the fact that some of the worst schools in the public system don't even have laboratories. I mean, the people are supposed to be studying science and doing chemistry and all sorts of experiments. They don't even have libraries.
Yeah, it is like that. There's about 26,000 schools in South Africa, about 24,000 are public schools, and there's I think 17,000 don't have internet. Some don't have basic sanitation. And as you say, a lot don't have laboratories and libraries. And it's very difficult to learn in those circumstances. And so there's huge challenges involved in that. We do spend a lot of money out of our GDP on education, one of the highest percentages in the world. And a lot of CSI budget goes towards education too, but we still need more money going into the system.
Will money on its own sort out the problems? I'm just asking because we are told that the majority of grade 4 learners, for example, cannot read for meaning. So one wonders whether it's access to the right material or it's the quality of the teachers.
Yeah, I mean, that's a complex question because it's like, what is the problem? It's a complex system with the many different ways we can address it. So the teaching is really important. We need to teach the teachers better. We're going to have a teacher shortage, they say. In about 5 years, we'll be 30,000 teachers short of where we want to be. And so there's all kinds of different ways we can address it. Money, some people think would help. But we also need to get people, or all the players involved, pulling in the right direction. So we need the teachers, we need the trade unions or the teachers unions, we need the parents, the education department, and we need civil society itself. We need everyone to get involved and realize that the schooling system, the education system is probably worse than people even realize. That everyone realizes bad, but it's probably worse than people actually click and understand. And it's a huge challenge, and the only way we can really address it is if everyone gets involved and every player in the system starts pulling in that direction. And that includes the man on the street. That includes everyone doing their bit to help the schools near them. And that's what we try to do at Crew for Cause. We've created a platform where people can give money to start off with. We want them to donate as little as 50 Rand a month, and that can get the ball rolling. But we also need people to give their time and give their expertise. Schools need accountants, they need fundraisers, they need lawyers, they need coaches. And so if they could just kind of step out of what they're doing and get involved in the schools near them, that would make a huge difference. And that's what we need to do to actually make a difference.
Yeah, we'll talk about your fundraising efforts shortly, but for now I just want to focus on the big story of this evening, which is going to be the announcement by the Basic Education Minister, Angie Motshekga, from 6 o'clock this evening of the results of the National Senior Certificate or the Matric class of 2022. Because we're going to have a bunch again of school leavers, people, those who have done well in terms of Matric, passing Matric, and one wonders about the future because the supply of available tertiary spaces and the demand, I mean, are not matching. No,
that's right. I think roughly speaking, every year about 1.5 million or 150,000. About 1.1 million people write Matric exams, and then 150,000 people pass at a level that is acceptable to universities, but only half of those people will get into university. So only half of the people who can get in will find a space. And that's obviously a huge problem because what happens to that other half? There's already a huge youth unemployment problem and a skills shortage. So there's big challenges facing those who can't find a space.
Yeah, I mean, we cannot overemphasize the need to address this because already youth unemployment is staggeringly high. I mean, of the 35% official unemployment rate, we're told that some 60% or so are young people. That's a conservative estimate because as long as the youth unemployment continues to be high, the economy is going to suffer from a huge skills shortage.
Yeah, and I think, when people go into the schools, a lot of the learners, the feedback they get is they find that there's no pathway to jobs and there's no reason to hope. So if you are a 15-year-old, 16-year-old and you being pressured to study hard, but you don't see a way forward or something to work towards, it can be quite discouraging when you see maybe older siblings, people who have done well and they themselves have gone out and not find a way to get a tertiary education or further education and get a job. Then it becomes discouraging.
Yeah,
and I think that's quite an aspect to talk about.
Yeah, it's a big aspect. Yeah. And you said earlier, everybody needs to work together. I mean, in your investigations, Matt, are there any encouraging signs of that?
I think the big encouraging signs are that there are a lot of good organizations in the space. There are about 7,500 education NPOs in the country. There are some great people working in the education department itself, and they're all scattered about. There are some amazing organizations out there who are changing the landscape, trying to get people to learn in their home languages, trying to just do better out there. So there are a lot of people who care about this and realize how important education is in South Africa who are doing amazing work. It's a matter of kind of getting everyone to work together and try to break ground. It's a complex situation. It's a very challenging situation, but there are pockets of hope throughout the landscape.
But as you've noted, it's much easier said than done.
It is, and it's much easier to not acknowledge it. It's much easier to pretend that we must leave it to the Department of Education, we must leave it to the teachers. But the only way we're really going to move the needle and make things better is that each South African, every South African, whether it's corporations or companies, getting involved in their local schools or just individuals, we all have to work together. People talk about education as a right and water as a right, but as citizens of South Africa, we also have obligations, and we should feel obliged. If you are in a position to help, if you have a job and disposable income, you are obliged to help the education system and get involved where you can, whether it's financially or with your time.
Yeah. Tell us more then about your organization's fundraising campaign. What is it all about?
So our name is Crew for Cause. We're a crowdfunding platform for education. So our goal is to make contributing to education as easy as possible. We want to make it as rewarding as possible so people can see where their money is going. 100% of their money goes towards the projects that we support. It's tax deductible because we're a registered PBO, and we partner with organizations that are most effective in the education space. So we make it as rewarding and effective and transparent as possible because we know that people need to trust us to make it happen. So if people go onto our website, crewforacause.co.za, they can get involved and contribute very easily to the schools near them.
Is Crew for a Cause just one word for your web address, and is that only lowercase, just Crew for a Cause or Crews for Cause?
It's crew, CREW, for a cause.co.za.
Okay, thank you very much. And are you getting responses? I mean, do you have a target in mind? How has the campaign been running since you began?
It's running very well at the moment. We're supporting 22 students this year across the country. We've got support from across the world. We've got growing membership, and it's growing exponentially every year. People like it because they can see where their money is going. They can see that we care about it. We run it in our spare time. This isn't what we do. It's not a way for us to benefit. We're just trying to make education better, and people like it because, like I say, it's direct line to the schools near them and how they can get involved. And we're hoping to build a movement. We're hoping to get people more engaged in education and make a big difference. So this is one step. A little bit of money people can give us those they want. 50 Rand a month is all that it takes to get involved. And from there, we can hopefully create an organization that's what we see as like a civil society union. You know, you get teachers unions. We want to get a civil society union of people who care, like-minded South Africans who want to make a difference and try to improve South Africa's education.
Yeah, now I get it. So you are like-minded professionals who come together as a crew for a cause, and the cause in this case is education. And is this money only for bursaries, or these 22 students that you are supporting in different parts of the country? Is it by way of bursaries, and what are you covering for them? Is it just tuition fees plus accommodation, and what? Can you just break it down for us?
Yeah. So the way we work is that we can create pods or little crews themselves. So, for example, you and your colleagues at eNCA could create your own little pod, and you could directly support one learner. So we're starting off now with bursaries. They're recruited we test them in English, math, science, and grit, and the grit ensures that they'll do well in high school and they'll perform well academically. And that's how we're starting with the bursaries, because people can see exactly where their money is going. But once we develop and we grow, we want to go beyond that to help the schools. As I said, there's a huge discrepancy between the best schools and the worst schools. So now we're starting off with identifying the talent and giving them a chance, but then we also want to get involved with organizations that are improving the worst schools and making them better, and kind of sending them into schools as, like, I call them mercenaries, and go in there and they just get involved with how the schools are performing and just make them better and improve the situation across the board.
Matt, we salute you for your efforts, Matt, with you and your colleagues, the crew, and hopefully the movement does grow, because we really need to make sure that our children's future is secured through good quality education. Thank you very much for your time this afternoon on Today. Matthew Sterne, a director of a civil society organization, Crew for a Cause. Check them out, and you might also chip in there to assist in this drive to make sure our children access good quality education and their futures are secured.